The Omega Registry was where you ended up when your own pack had thrown you away. And as Marin stood among the desperate Omegas waiting to be claimed, her 5-year-old son's hand gripped tight in hers, she knew they were the most unwanted of all. A disgraced Omega was bad enough. A disgraced Omega with a child was unsellable. The other Omegas kept their distance. Officials passed by without meeting her eyes, and the whispers never stopped. Why would she bring a pup here? Doesn't she know children make Omegas worthless? I heard her own pack branded her. Something about forbidden blood. Look at the boy's eyes, silver, unnatural. They weren't wrong to wonder. Marin carried secrets that would destroy her if anyone discovered them. And Kale, sweet, strange Kale, with his knowing gaze and unsettling calm, was the biggest secret of all. Every alpha who'd walked through the registry in the past 3 months had taken one look at them and walked away. Some had laughed. One had spat at her feet. Today was the final day. If no one claimed her by sunset, she and Kale would become pack labor. Or worse. Marin pulled her son closer, feeling his small fingers tighten around hers. "Mama," he whispered suddenly, his pale gaze fixed on the door. "Someone's coming. Someone cold. So cold he's forgotten what warmth feels like." Before Marin could respond, the great doors exploded open. Every Omega gasped. Officials stumbled backward. The air itself seemed to freeze, because walking through the entrance was Soren Valdrin, the S-rank alpha, the Frost Wolf, the most powerful unmated alpha in the 7 territories, and the most feared. His pale gray eyes swept the room like a winter storm, passing Omega after Omega without a glance. Until Kale broke free from Marin's grip, ran across the stone floor, and grabbed the alpha's hand. "You're so cold," the boy said, looking up at him with those strange moonlit eyes. "But there's fire underneath. Mom has fire too. She can warm you." The hall went deathly silent. Soren Valdrin stared down at the child. Then his gaze lifted to Marin, still frozen in place, heart pounding, certain this was the end. "I'll take them both," he said. Neither Marin nor Soren understood how impossible those words would prove to be. The Omega Registry of Keldros had once been a sanctuary. 300 years ago, the founders had built it as a place where unmated Omegas could find protection, partnership, dignity. Now it was a marketplace. Marin had been here for 92 days. She knew because she'd scratched a mark into the wall beside her cot each morning, a small defiance against the crushing sameness of each day. 92 days of watching alphas browse through Omegas like livestock. 92 days of being passed over, sneered at, dismissed. 92 days of keeping Kale alive. "Mama, you're thinking loud again." Marin looked down at her son, curled against her side on the narrow cot they shared. His pale eyes caught the dim lamplight, reflecting it back like mirrors. He was too thin. They both were. But his gaze remained sharp, watchful, and old beyond his 5 years. "Sorry, little wolf," she murmured, smoothing his dark hair. "Go back to sleep. The selection isn't until midday." "I can't sleep." Kale pressed his palm against her chest, right over her heart. "Your fire is restless. It wants to burn something." Marin's blood went cold. "Kale." She kept her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "What did I tell you about saying things like that?" "Only to you, never to anyone else." He recited it like a prayer. "Because if they knew about the fire, bad things would happen." "That's right." "But Mama." His strange eyes searched her face. "I can feel it getting stronger. Every day. It wants out." Marin closed her eyes, fighting the burn behind them. This was her fault. Her curse passed down to her innocent child. The forbidden flame that ran through her bloodline. The reason her father had branded her, cast her out, sent her here to rot. Pyra blood. The Pyra had been exterminated 3 centuries ago, hunted down and slaughtered after the Great Burning. Their fire magic was considered an abomination, a corruption of the natural shifter gifts. Anyone discovered to carry even a trace of Pyra lineage was executed. Marin's mother had hidden the truth for decades. She'd suppressed her abilities, mated a respectable alpha, and raised 2 daughters. No one ever suspected. Then, when Marin was barely 3 years old, her mother had vanished. Marin had fragmented memories. Warmth, a whispered promise, the scent of smoke and snow. Her father claimed she'd abandoned them, run off with some lover. But Marin had always wondered if there was more to the story. Her fire manifested on her 18th birthday. She'd been arguing with Rendrick, furious that he'd been pawing at her when he was promised to Tanith. Her father had been there too, watching from the doorway, his eyes calculating. He'd said something. Marin could never remember exactly what, but his words had been designed to provoke, to push her toward the edge. And then the fire came. Rendrick had screamed. Flames had consumed his clothes, his skin. Marin had tried to stop it, tried to pull the fire back, but she'd never been taught control. By the time the flames died, Rendrick was gone. Her father had smiled. Marin shoved the memory away. She couldn't think about that now. Couldn't think about how quickly he'd produced the branding iron, as if he'd been waiting for this moment, as if he'd planned it. Final day. Marin's head snapped up. The registry warden stood at their cell door, keys jangling. His name was Corvus, and he looked at her the way a vulture looked at dying prey. No alpha claims you today. You become pack labor. His lips curled. The mines always need omegas. The pup too, once he's old enough. He's 5 years old. They start them at 7 in the northern shafts. Corvus shrugged. Smaller bodies fit through tighter tunnels. 2 more years he'll be useful. Marin's fire surged beneath her skin, begging to be released. She forced it down, forced her expression to remain blank. The selection begins at noon, Corvus continued. Make yourself presentable, though I doubt it'll matter. His gaze slid to Sale, something dark flickering there. Shame about the boy. Pretty pups sometimes find other uses. The fire roared. Marin's vision went red. Her fingertips burned. She opened her mouth. Don't. Kale's hand closed around her wrist. His touch was cool, impossibly cool, and the fire retreated instantly. Corvus snorted and walked away. Marin stared at her son, heart hammering. Kale, how did you... The fire listens to me sometimes. His moonlit eyes were calm. I asked it to be quiet. It didn't want to, but I asked nicely. Before Marin could process this impossibility, a horn sounded in the distance. Noon had arrived, and somewhere beyond the registry walls, something cold was approaching. The selection hall was a cavernous chamber of gray stone and iron bars. Omegas were arranged in rows along raised platforms organized by age and status. The youngest and most desirable stood at the front, pretty things with unblemished skin and no complications. Marin had been placed in the back corner. The reject section, the wardens called it. Widows, elderly omegas, those with physical impairments, and her, the omega with the strange child. Kale stood beside her, his small hand wrapped around 2 of her fingers. He'd been unusually quiet since the horn sounded, his pale gaze distant, fixed on something only he could see. Kale, Marin whispered. What is it? He's almost here. Who? But Kale didn't answer. He simply stared at the great doors across the hall, waiting. The selection began. Alphas entered in waves. Lower ranks first, gammas and betas looking for household omegas, nothing fancy. They browsed the front rows, occasionally pointing, negotiating with wardens like merchants at a fish market. None came near Marin's corner. Hours passed. The hall grew stuffier, the air thick with competing scents, the desperation of omegas, the assessment of alphas, the bored indifference of officials who'd seen it all before. Marin watched omega after omega be claimed. A young widow with sad eyes, a gamma male who limped but could still work. Even the elderly omega beside her was selected by a kind-faced beta seeking companionship, but no one approached Marin. "Mama." Kale tugged her hand. "Not now, sweetheart." "Mama." More urgent. "He's here." The doors didn't just open, they exploded inward, slamming against the walls with enough force to crack stone, and the temperature dropped. Marin gasped as frost crept across the floor, spreading outward from the entrance like spilled water. Her breath fogged in the suddenly frigid air. Beside her, Kale's eyes went wide, not with fear, but with wonder. "Cold," he breathed. "So cold." The alpha who walked through the doors was unlike anything Marin had ever seen. He was tall, taller than any alpha in the room, with white blonde hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes the color of winter frost. His face was brutally beautiful, all sharp angles and cutting planes, with skin so pale it seemed almost translucent. He wore black, head to toe, and moved with the fluid grace of a predator who had never known the fear of being prey. But it was his presence that stole Marin's breath. Power radiated from him in waves, pressing against her chest like a physical weight. This wasn't the dominance of a strong alpha. This was something ancient, something primal, something that made every omega in the room bare their throat on instinct. "The Frost Wolf," someone whispered. "Soren Valdrin. S rank." "What's he doing here?" Marin couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She'd heard stories about Soren Valdrin. Everyone had. The unmated alpha who ruled the northern territories. The wolf who had killed 100 enemies in the border wars without taking a single wound. The man whose touch was said to freeze the blood of anyone who got too close. The man who had gone through 7 potential mates in 10 years. Each one dead within months of the bonding. He was called the Widowmaker by those who survived knowing him. It was said that loving Soren Valdrin was a death sentence. And now, he was here, in a registry, looking for an omega. "Continue," he said, his voice like cracking ice. The officials scrambled to comply, but their movements were jerky, terrified. Alphas backed away as Soren walked forward, parting before him like water around a glacier. He passed the front rows without a glance. The prettiest omegas, the youngest, the most desirable, invisible to him. He passed the middle sections, the widows and workers and serviceable choices. He kept walking. Toward the back. Toward her. Marin's pulse thundered so loud she could hear it. Beside her, Kale was trembling, not with fear, she realized with shock, but with something like recognition. "Mama," he whispered. "Mama, I have to." Before she could stop him, Kale broke free. He ran across the frost-covered floor, his small feet leaving prints in the ice, and grabbed Soren Valdrin's hand with both of his own. The hall went silent. Marin forgot how to breathe. Soren stared down at the child who dared to touch him, this boy with moonlit eyes and dark hair, who should have frozen the moment his skin made contact with the frost wolf's cursed flesh. But Kale didn't freeze. Instead, he looked up at Soren with ancient knowing in his young face and said, "You're so cold. So cold you've forgotten what it feels like to be warm. But there's fire underneath all that ice. Mama has fire too." He smiled, a child's innocent smile. "She can warm you, and maybe then you won't have to be alone anymore." The silence stretched. Then Soren Valdrin looked up, looked directly at Marin, and she felt his gaze like a blade against her throat. "That one," he said. "The Omega with the fire. I'll take her and the boy." Chaos erupted. "Your Majesty, this is highly irregular." The chief warden's voice trembled as he hurried alongside Soren, clutching a leather folio of documents. Marin followed behind with Kale in her arms, flanked by two of Soren's personal guards, massive alphas in black armor who had appeared from nowhere the moment their lord made his selection. Irregular? Soren didn't slow his stride. I chose an Omega. That's the purpose of this establishment. Yes, but this Omega, Your Majesty. The warden shot a nervous glance at Marin. She carries the brand. Forbidden blood. Her own pack cast her out for. Did I ask for her history? No, Your Majesty, but protocol requires. I don't recognize your protocol. Soren stopped so abruptly that the warden nearly collided with him. I recognize power, and that Omega carries more of it in her little finger than everyone in this building combined. I will take her. I will take the boy. You will process the claim immediately. Is that clear? The warden's face went white. Yes, Your Majesty. Immediately, Your Majesty. He scurried away. Marin stood frozen, Kale still clutched against her chest. The boy had gone quiet since his outburst in the hall, his pale eyes half-lidded, exhausted from whatever strange sight had compelled him to approach the Frostwolf. Soren turned to face her. Up close, he was even more terrifying. His eyes weren't just pale, they were colorless, like ice so thick it had forgotten it was ever water. And the cold radiating from him was real, not metaphorical. Marin's breath fogged between them despite the warm afternoon. You're frightened, he observed. There was no point in lying. Yes. Good. Fear is sensible. He studied her the way one might study an interesting specimen. The boy. What is he? Marin's arms tightened around Kale. He's my son. That's not what I asked. It's the only answer you'll get. Something flickered in those frozen eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Or interest. You'd defy me? An S-rank alpha who just claimed your bond? You claimed my bond, not my secrets. Marin lifted her chin, fighting to keep her voice steady. Those belong to me. Soren stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Fire indeed, he murmured. The boy wasn't wrong. Before Marin could respond, the warden returned, breathless and sweating despite the cold that followed Soren everywhere. The documents, Your Majesty. He thrust the folio forward with shaking hands. Standard claiming contract. Just requires your signature and hers. Soren took the folio without looking at it. Leave us. The warden fled. Soren opened the leather folder and scanned the contents, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled a pen from his coat, made several sharp strokes across the pages, and held the folio out to Marin. Sign. Marin hesitated. I don't know the terms. The terms are simple. Soren's voice held no warmth, no persuasion, only blunt fact. You will be my mate. You and the boy will live in my household under my protection. You will want for nothing. In exchange, you will give me an heir. Beyond that, we will not share a life. We will not share a room. I will not touch you except when necessary for conception. I will not love you. I am incapable of it. The words hung in the air between them, cold and final. Marin's mind raced. She thought of the mines Corvus had described, the other uses for pretty pups, the 92 days of being passed over, sneered at, dismissed. She thought of Kale. Why me? She asked. You could have anyone. Why choose the branded Omega with the strange child? Soren's gaze dropped to Kale, still drowsy in her arms. Because he touched me, he said quietly, skin to skin, and he didn't die. Marin's blood went cold. What? My curse, Omega. Soren's voice was flat, empty. 7 potential mates in 10 years, each one dead within months of our bonding. The curse freezes them from the inside. It starts slow, a chill they can't shake, frost on their breath even in summer. Then the ice reaches their heart. He paused. No one has ever touched my bare skin and survived. Until your boy. Maren looked down at Kale. His eyes were open now, watching Soren with that eerie knowing. The fire, she breathed. He has... I didn't know he could... Whatever he is, whatever you are, it's warmth I'd long forgotten could exist. Soren held out the pen. Sign the contract. Give me an heir. And perhaps, you'll be the one who doesn't die. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't even an offer. It was a desperate gamble from a man who had frozen out all hope long ago. Maren should refuse. She knew that. This was madness. Binding herself to a cursed alpha, gambling her life on her son's impossible gift, trading one form of captivity for another. But then she thought of the alternative. The mines, Corvus's hungry eyes, Kale small enough to fit through narrow tunnels. She took the pen. I have one condition. Soren's eyebrow rose. You're negotiating? Kale's secret stays secret. Whatever you suspect about him, about me, it never leaves this room. You never ask. You never investigate. You protect him as you would your own blood. Maren met his frozen gaze without flinching. Swear it, and I'll sign. The silence stretched so long that Maren thought she'd pushed too far. Then Soren inclined his head. I swear it. Your secrets are your own. The boy will be protected. He paused. My people will call him my son. No one will question his presence. Does this satisfy you? Something cracked in Maren's chest. Something that had been frozen for 92 days. Yes, she whispered. She signed her name beside his. It's done. Soren took the folio. We leave within the hour. My carriage is waiting. He turned toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Maren tensed. Yes? My condition. He didn't turn around. You will never warm me. You will never try to thaw what I've become. And you will never, under any circumstances, attempt to make me love you. I am warning you now, Omega. Everyone who has tried has died. My heart is not frozen by accident. It is frozen by necessity. Disturb it, and you disturb your own grave. Then he walked out, leaving frost in his footprints and ice in Maren's soul. But as she looked down at Kale, her son smiled. He's lying, Mama, he whispered. The ice isn't to protect him. It's protecting everyone else. From the fire underneath. Before Maren could ask what he meant, the guards arrived to escort them. And somewhere deep inside her, the flame that had been sleeping for 5 years stirred awake. The northern citadel rose from the frozen landscape like a monument to winter itself. Maren pressed her face to the carriage window, breath fogging the glass as she stared at the fortress that would become her home. Towers of black stone pierced a slate-gray sky. Walls thick enough to withstand siege armies surrounded courtyards where snow fell even now, in what should have been late summer. And at the center, the Great Keep, a spiraling structure of ice and iron that seemed to grow from the mountain itself. It's cold, Kale murmured from her lap, but not like him. This cold is lonely. It's been waiting for something. Maren stroked his hair, saying nothing. She'd learned to stop questioning her son's observations. They were too often true. The carriage passed through 3 sets of gates, each one guarded by soldiers who stared at Maren with undisguised curiosity. Word had spread, clearly. The frost wolf had finally chosen a mate, and not a noble Omega from a powerful pack, not a political alliance, not even a pretty young thing from the front rows of the registry. He'd chosen the branded reject with the strange child. By the time they reached the inner courtyard, a crowd had gathered. Servants, soldiers, advisors, all watching, waiting, whispering. Soren exited the carriage first, his boots crunching on frost-covered stone. He didn't offer Maren his hand. Of course he didn't. He couldn't touch anyone without risking their death. But as Maren climbed down with Kale in her arms, she noticed something. A servant had rushed forward with a thick fur cloak, clearly intended for her. But before the woman could reach Marin, Soren intercepted her. "The boy first," he said. The servant blinked. "Your Majesty?" "The child is cold. He gets the cloak first." It was such a small thing. A single sentence. But Marin felt something shift in her chest as she watched Soren Valdrin, the Frost Wolf, the Widowmaker, the most feared alpha in 7 territories, wrap a fur cloak around her 5-year-old son with careful, precise movements. He didn't touch Kale's skin. He was meticulous about that. But the gesture itself. "Thank you," Kale said solemnly, looking up at Soren. "You're still cold, though. Doesn't the fur help you?" "Nothing helps me." Soren's voice was flat. "Come. The bonding ceremony is in 2 hours." He walked toward the keep without looking back. Marin followed, Kale's hand in hers, and tried to ignore the whispers that trailed behind them like ghosts. The ceremonial hall was a cathedral of ice. Pillars of frozen crystal stretched toward a vaulted ceiling where chandeliers hung like captured stars. The floor was polished stone, so cold that Marin could feel it through her thin shoes. And the guests, hundreds of them, stood in rigid rows, their breath fogging in the frigid air. They were all staring at her. Marin had been dressed by silent servants in a gown of deep blue velvet, the color of frozen twilight. Her hair had been braided with silver thread. Her brand had been carefully hidden beneath the high collar of her dress. White gloves covered her hands and forearms for the blood exchange. But nothing could hide the fear in her eyes, or the child standing beside her. "Why is there a pup?" someone whispered. "She brought a child? To a bonding ceremony?" The Frost Wolf agreed to this? Marin's fingers tightened around Kale's hand. She should have insisted he stay in the chambers they'd been assigned. But when the servants had tried to take him, he'd screamed. Actually screamed. And Marin had felt her fire surge so violently that the nearest candle had exploded. So Kale was here, standing beside her at the altar, facing the entire northern court with those unsettling pale eyes. Soren waited at the front of the hall, dressed in black as always, his white blonde hair pulled back from his face. He looked like a statue carved from ice, beautiful and terrible and utterly untouchable. The officiant, an ancient Omega with a voice like cracking glaciers, began the ceremony. "We gather to witness the bonding of Soren Valdrin, Alpha of the Northern Territories, to Marin of No Pack, Omega claimed by right of selection." Of no pack. The words stung more than Marin expected. "The terms of this bonding have been established by contract," the officiant continued. "The Omega agrees to provide an heir. The Alpha agrees to provide protection and provision. This is a bonding of obligation, not of heart. Let none expect more than what has been promised." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Marin kept her gaze forward, refusing to let them see her shame. "The claiming marks will now be exchanged." This was the part Marin had dreaded. Traditional bonding required the Alpha to bite the Omega's neck, leaving a permanent mark. But Soren couldn't touch her skin without risking the curse. So they'd arranged an alternative. Soren stepped forward, holding a small blade of black ice. Marin removed her right glove, exposing her wrist. He made a single cut, drawing a thin line of blood. Then he pressed his own blade to his palm, drawing matching blood. Their blood dripped into a shared chalice. The officiant mixed it with some dark liquid, then held the cup between them. "Drink, and be bound." Marin drank first. The liquid was bitter and cold, numbing her tongue, sliding down her throat like liquid winter. Then Soren drank, and Marin felt it. A thread, thin and fragile, connecting her to him. Not love, not even affection, just awareness. She could sense his presence now, a cold pressure at the edge of her consciousness. "It is done," the officiant declared, Let none separate what blood has joined. The crowd erupted in polite applause, but the confusion was palpable. No bite marks, no claiming kiss, an Omega with a child and a brand. This was not the bonding they'd expected, but before anyone could voice their doubts, Cale stepped forward. "Wait," he said, his small voice carrying through the hall. The breath left Marin's lungs. Cale walked toward Soren, ignoring the gasps, ignoring the guards who moved to intercept him. He stopped directly in front of the frost wolf and held up his arms in the universal gesture of a child wanting to be picked up. "You're my father now," Cale said simply. "The blood said so. I felt it." The hall went deathly silent. Soren stared down at the boy. His face betrayed nothing, but Marin saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched. "I cannot hold you," Soren said quietly. "My touch won't hurt me." Cale's strange eyes were certain. "I told you, the fire protects." Before anyone could stop him, Soren Valdrin, S-rank Alpha, Frost Wolf, Widowmaker, knelt down and lifted the boy into his arms. The crowd gasped. Marin couldn't move. But Cale didn't freeze. Didn't even shiver. He wrapped his small arms around Soren's neck and pressed his warm cheek against the Alpha's cold one. "See?" Cale whispered, loud enough for only Soren and Marin to hear. "You're not poison, father. You're just lonely." Something cracked in Soren's frozen expression, something that looked almost like pain. He held the boy for a moment longer, just one moment, before setting him down and stepping back. His face once again a mask of ice. "The ceremony is concluded," he announced. "My mate and my son will retire to their chambers." "My son." The words echoed through the hall, and as Marin was escorted away, Cale's hand in hers, she saw something she'd never expected to see. Soren Valdrin, the man who couldn't love, watching her leave with something burning in his frozen eyes. Night fell over the northern citadel like a shroud. Marin sat on the edge of the massive bed in her new chambers, hands clasped in her lap, trying to control her breathing. The room was lavish, furs and silks and a fireplace large enough to roast a boar, but none of it could dispel the chill that seeped through the stone walls, or the chill of anticipation in her blood. The bonding ceremony had been hours ago. Servants had brought food she couldn't eat, wine she didn't touch, and endless questions disguised as courtesies. Now Cale slept in the adjoining nursery, exhausted from the day's events, and Marin was alone. Waiting. She knew what came next. The contract had been explicit. She would give Soren an heir. That meant. A knock at the door made her jump. "Enter," she managed. Soren stepped inside, and the temperature dropped. He'd changed from his ceremonial clothes into simpler attire, a loose white shirt, dark trousers, his feet bare against the cold floor. His hair was unbound now, falling around his shoulders like pale silk. He looked less like a king and more like a man. A beautiful, terrifying, impossibly cold man. "You're frightened," he observed, closing the door behind him. "I've been frightened since you chose me," Marin admitted. "I see no reason to stop now." Something flickered in his pale gray eyes. "Honesty. That's rare in this court." "I don't know how to be anything else." Soren moved further into the room, and Marin watched frost spread beneath his bare feet, thin crystals forming on the stone. He stopped several feet from the bed, keeping distance between them. "I need to explain something," he said, "before we proceed." Marin nodded, not trusting her voice. "My curse is not metaphorical." Soren's voice was clinical, detached. "The cold that radiates from me is real. It intensifies with proximity, with touch, with intimacy. My previous mates died because they couldn't withstand it. The ice entered their bodies through contact with mine. It spread slowly at first, then rapidly. Within months, their hearts had frozen solid. Marin's stomach turned. And you think I'll be different? Because of Kale? I think your son carries fire that can withstand my frost. Whether you carry the same? He paused. I don't know. This could kill you. You should understand that before we begin. Would you let me leave if I refused? No. The word was immediate, honest. The contract is signed. The bonding is complete. You are mine now, and you will give me an heir. He held her gaze. But I'm offering you time. If you need to prepare, to build your resistance to... I don't need time. Soren went still. Marin stood, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it. I've been running from what I am for 5 years, hiding my fire, suppressing it, terrified of what would happen if anyone discovered the truth. She took a step toward him, then another. But Kale touched you and lived. That means the fire in my blood is strong enough. Maybe it's always been strong enough, and I was just too afraid to use it. She stopped an arm's length away from him. The cold was intense now, pressing against her skin like a physical force. I'm done being afraid, she whispered. If I'm going to die, I'd rather die burning than spend the rest of my life frozen. Soren stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. May I? Marin nodded. His palm pressed against her cheek, and she gasped. The cold was unlike anything she'd ever felt. Not the simple chill of winter air, but something deeper. A cold that reached into her bones, her blood, the very core of her being. It was hungry. It wanted to consume her, to fill every warm space with ice. But beneath her skin, her fire responded. It rose without her bidding, spreading through her veins like liquid flame. Where his cold invaded, her heat pushed back. The two forces met somewhere in the middle, neither conquering, neither retreating. Soren made a sound, soft, shocked, and his eyes widened. You're warm, he breathed. I can feel it. You're actually warm. Is that not normal? Normal. A strange, broken laugh escaped him. I haven't felt warmth since I was a child. Every touch has been ice. Every contact has been cold. But you... His hand trembled against her face. You're burning. Marin's eyes stung. Does it hurt? Yes. His voice cracked. It hurts like remembering something I thought I'd forgotten. Like coming back to life after being dead for so long. She should pull away. This was clearly overwhelming him. But instead, she raised her own hand and pressed it against his chest, right over his heart. The cold intensified. Her fire surged to meet it. And beneath her palm, she felt something she hadn't expected. A heartbeat. Fast. Strong. Alive. You're not frozen, she whispered. Not completely. There's still something alive in there. Soren closed his eyes, and for one moment, just one, the mask of ice cracked completely. She saw the man beneath. Exhausted, lonely, desperate for something he'd convinced himself didn't exist. Then he pulled back. The cold retreated. Her fire banked. They stood apart, both breathing hard, the air between them foggy with their mingled breath. The consummation, Soren said, his voice rough. It doesn't have to be tonight. We have time. I thought you needed an heir. I need an heir who survives conception. His jaw tightened. If your fire isn't strong enough, if you can't maintain it during intimacy, the cold will kill you. We need to test your limits first. Build your endurance. It made sense. Clinical, careful sense. But something in Marin rebelled against it. Oh, or, she said quietly, we could stop being careful. Stop treating this like a transaction. Stop pretending we're not already affecting each other. Soren's eyes darkened. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking for honesty. You said you couldn't love. But the way you looked at Kale today, the way you just looked at me, that wasn't nothing. It doesn't matter what I feel. His voice was sharp now, cutting. Don't you understand? Every mate I've ever cared for has died. My mother, my first bonded, the 6 after her. The more I felt, the stronger the curse became, the faster they froze. He took a step back. I've learned to feel nothing because feeling nothing is the only way to keep anyone alive. The confession hung between them, raw and bleeding. Marin's heart ached for him. This man who had built walls of ice not to protect himself, but to protect everyone else. Then don't love me, she said softly, but let me warm you anyway. Just for tonight. No feelings, no complications. Just heat. Soren stared at her. The war in his eyes was visible. Desire battling duty, hope battling fear. You could die, he whispered. I could have died in the mines, too. At least this way, I choose. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Soren crossed the distance between them and kissed her. The cold hit her like a wave, her fire rose to meet it. And somewhere in the collision, in the impossible meeting of frost and flame, Marin forgot to be afraid. His hands were in her hair, her fingers clutched his shoulders. He was ice, and she was fire, and together they were something neither had ever been alone. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Marin's lips were numb and Soren's eyes were wild. More, he breathed. I need more. So she gave him more. She woke before dawn to find him gone. The sheets beside her were cold, genuinely cold, frost clinging to the fabric where he'd lain. But on her pillow sat a single white flower, perfect and crystalline, made entirely of ice. A gift. Marin lifted it carefully, feeling the cold against her fingertips. As she held it, the ice began to melt, droplets running down her wrist. But the flower's shape remained, preserved somehow against the warmth of her skin. And for the first time since the registry, Marin let herself hope. 3 weeks passed. Marin had expected Soren to keep his distance after that first night. He'd made his terms clear. No love, no life together, no connection beyond what was necessary for conception. But every evening, as the sun set over the frozen mountains, he appeared at her door. The first time, he'd offered excuses. He needed to discuss household arrangements. There were papers to sign. He wanted to check on the boy's adjustment. By the end of the first week, he stopped pretending. I don't know why I keep coming here, he admitted one night, standing by her fireplace, staring into flames that seemed to reach toward him like living things. I shouldn't. Every night I spend with you makes this more complicated. Marin looked up from the book she'd been reading, a volume of Northern history she'd found in the library. Then don't come. I can't seem to stop. She smiled despite herself. Is that so terrible? Soren turned to face her, firelight playing across his sharp features. You don't understand. I've spent 17 years building walls. Control, discipline. Every emotion locked away because emotion feeds the curse. And you, he shook his head, you make me feel things I'd forgotten existed. Like what? Anticipation. When I'm away from you, I count the hours until evening. Contentment. When I'm here, the cold seems less consuming. And something else. His voice dropped. Something I don't have a name for. It sits in my chest like a fire I can't extinguish. Marin set her book aside and stood. Maybe you're not supposed to extinguish it. The last time I let myself feel like this, she died within a month. I'm not her. I'm not any of them. She crossed the room to stand before him, close enough to feel the cold radiating from his skin. I carry fire, Soren. Real fire. Your ice tried to kill me that first night and I burned through it. Maybe I'm exactly what you need. His hand rose, trembling to touch her face. The cold bloomed against her cheek, and her fire rose to meet it. Or maybe, he whispered, you're exactly what will destroy me. Before she could respond, a small voice interrupted. Father? They both turned. Kale stood in the doorway of the nursery, his pale eyes heavy with sleep, but fixed on Soren with that uncanny knowing. "What is it, little one?" Soren asked, and Marin's heart squeezed at the gentleness in his voice. "I had a dream. A bad one." Kale padded across the room and reached for Soren's hand without hesitation. "There was a woman with ice in her eyes. She was coming for you. For all of us." Soren went rigid. "What did she look like? Old? Beautiful? Angry?" Kale shivered, not from cold, but from fear. "She said you belong to her, that you've always belonged to her, that the fire is an abomination and she won't let it take what's hers." Marin's blood chilled. "Kale, who was she?" "I don't know, Mama. But she's real, and she's already watching." Soren knelt down, bringing himself to Kale's level. His expression was controlled, but Marin saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched. "I won't let anyone hurt you," he said quietly. "Or your mother. Do you believe me?" Kale studied him with those ancient eyes. "I believe you'll try, but she's been here longer than you. Longer than anyone. She's the reason you're cold." He tilted his head. "You know who she is, don't you?" Soren said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. That night, after Kale had been settled back to sleep, Soren sat on the edge of Marin's bed and told her the truth. "Her name is Seraphine. She is my ancestor from 10 generations past." Marin's eyes widened. "An ancestor from 300 years ago? How is she still alive?" "Frost witches don't age like mortals. The cold preserves them." Soren's voice was hollow. "She cursed our bloodline when my ancestor, my great-grandfather 10 times removed, took a second mate. A fire carrier from the southern reaches. Seraphine went mad with jealousy." "A fire carrier?" Marin repeated. "Like me. Like you. And like my mother." Soren's hands clenched against his thighs. "Seraphine couldn't bear the thought of fire entering her bloodline, so she cursed my ancestor. Made it so that any Valdran Alpha who fell in love would slowly freeze from the inside out, unless they remained completely cold, completely controlled. My ancestor died within the year. So did his fire carrier mate. But your mother survived? For a time. She was careful. She never fully loved my father. Not enough to trigger the curse. But after I was born," he closed his eyes, "she loved me, and Seraphine couldn't allow that either." Marin's heart broke. "She died. Frozen solid in her own chambers when I was 7 years old. I watched the ice crawl across her skin. Heard her call my name with her last breath." His voice cracked. "That's when I learned. Love is death. Caring is death. The only way to survive is to feel nothing at all." "But you do feel." Marin reached for him, letting her warmth seep through her palm into his frozen flesh. "You feel more than you want to admit. Which is why this has to stop." Soren pulled away, standing abruptly. "I shouldn't have kept coming here. I shouldn't have let myself—" He cut off, shaking his head. "The curse is already stirring. I can feel it. The ice is spreading faster than it has in years. Because of me? Because of what you make me feel." Marin stood, refusing to let him retreat. "Then we break the curse." "It can't be broken. Seraphine is still alive, still watching. As long as she exists, the curse holds. Then we find her. We end her." Soren laughed bitterly. "She's been hiding for 300 years. Countless hunters have tried to find her. All of them failed. All of them died." "They didn't have fire," Marin said fiercely. "I do. And so does Kale. You said yourself that we're the first warmth you've felt since childhood. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe we're exactly what's needed to end this." Soren stared at her, something shifting in his frozen eyes. "You would do that? Hunt a witch who's killed hundreds? Risk your life? Your son's life? For a curse that isn't yours?" Marin stepped closer, close enough to feel the cold radiating from him like a winter storm. It became my curse the moment I signed that contract. The moment Kale called you father. The moment you kissed me and made me feel like I was worth something for the first time in 5 years. She lifted her chin. I'm not just your mate, Soren. I'm your fire. And fire doesn't run from ice. It melts it. For a long moment, Soren said nothing. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The cold and warmth met, balanced, held. You terrify me, he whispered. Good. Maren smiled. Maybe that means you're finally starting to feel something. That night he stayed until morning, not for consummation, though there had been plenty of that in the weeks before, but simply to sleep beside her, his cold body pressed against her warm one, finding equilibrium in their opposition. When Maren woke at dawn, he was still there, still holding her, and for the first time his skin wasn't frost against hers. It was merely cool. Soren, she breathed, touching his cheek. Soren, wake up. Look. His eyes opened, pale gray and confused. What is it? Your temperature. She pressed her palm flat against his chest. You're warming up. Soren looked down at her hand, at the place where their skin met, and his eyes went wide. That's impossible. It's happening. Maren's heart raced. Whatever I am, whatever Kale is, it's working. Your curse is weakening. But even as hope bloomed in his eyes, something else flickered there. Something darker. If the curse is weakening, he said slowly, then Seraphine will notice. She's tied to it. She'll feel the fire burning through her ice. So she'll come for us. Yes. Soren's jaw tightened. And soon, as if summoned by his words, a scream split the morning air. Kale's scream. They were both running before the sound finished echoing. They found Kale standing in the center of his nursery, perfectly still, his pale eyes glazed over with frost. Kale! Maren dropped to her knees before him, gripping his shoulders. His skin was ice cold, colder than Soren, colder than anything natural. Kale, can you hear me? The boy didn't respond. His lips moved, but the voice that emerged wasn't his. Little fire child. The words were ancient, feminine, dripping with malice. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think you could thaw what I've frozen without consequences? Soren stepped forward, his face pale with fury. Seraphine, release him. Grandson. The word was a sneer in Kale's throat. Still alive, still cold, but not cold enough anymore. I feel the warmth creeping in. That Omega's filthy fire, corrupting my perfect curse. Maren's hands burned, literally burned, flames licking beneath her skin, desperate to be released. Let go of my son. Your son. Kale's head tilted at an unnatural angle, those frost-covered eyes fixing on Maren. Oh, you foolish girl. You have no idea what this child is, do you? What he truly carries in his blood? He's mine, Maren snarled. That's all I need to know. He's an abomination. Fire and ice shouldn't merge. Pyra and Valdrin should never have touched. But they did once, long ago. And the product of that union. Kale's lips curved into a cruel smile. Well, let's just say I've been searching for that bloodline for 10 generations. Soren went rigid. What are you talking about? The fire carrier your ancestor bedded wasn't just any Pyra, Seraphine said through Kale. She was the last of the High Pyra, the royal line, and she bore him a daughter before she died. A daughter I never found, who escaped my reach and vanished into the southern reaches. Maren's blood went cold. No. Oh, yes. The frost in Kale's eyes deepened. Your mother wasn't your father's true mate at all. She was the hidden heir to the Pyra throne, which makes you, sweet Omega, my husband's distant granddaughter. Seraphine laughed, high and brittle. You're not just fire. You're royal fire. And this boy, this impossible child, carries both our bloodlines. Frost and flame, Valdrin and Pyra. He's the key to either breaking my curse or making it eternal. Let him go, Soren commanded, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Take me instead. Do whatever you want with me, but release the boy. So protective, so caring. Seraphine's cruelty dripped from Kale's lips. That's exactly the problem, grandson. You were supposed to stay frozen. You were supposed to feel nothing. But this fire-blooded Omega has thawed you, hasn't she? I can feel your heart beating faster. Feel the warmth spreading through your chest. Feel the curse weakening with every moment you spend loving her. I don't, Soren started. Don't lie to me. The temperature in the room plummeted. Ice crept up the walls, coating the windows, sealing the doors. I feel everything you feel. Every flutter of hope, every spark of desire, every pathetic flutter of affection you've developed for her and this wretched child. You love them, Soren, and that love is destroying everything I've built. Kale's body convulsed. No. Maren reached for him, but Soren pulled her back. Don't touch him while she's inside, he warned. The cold will kill you. I won't let her hurt him. Then use your fire. Soren's eyes met hers, desperate and determined. You said you were done hiding. Prove it. Burn her out. Maren stared at her son, at the frost consuming his small body, at the ancient evil puppeting his flesh. Her fire roared beneath her skin, begging for release. But she'd never used it intentionally, never aimed it, never controlled it. What if she missed? What if she burned Kale instead of Seraphine? Mama. Maren's breath caught. It was Kale's voice. His real voice, small and frightened, breaking through Seraphine's control. Mama, it's okay. The fire knows me. It won't hurt me. His pale eyes cleared for just a moment. I trust you. That was enough. Maren let go. The fire erupted from her palms in a torrent of golden flame. It hit Kale's chest and spread outward, not burning but purifying, seeking out the frost that didn't belong and consuming it with hungry precision. Seraphine screamed. The sound was inhuman, a shriek of rage and pain that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ice on the walls shattered. The frost on Kale's eyes melted. And then, suddenly, it was over. Kale collapsed. Maren caught him, pulling him against her chest, sobbing with relief as she felt his warmth, his natural warmth, return. She's gone, Kale whispered weakly. For now. But Mama. His pale eyes met hers, filled with fear. She knows where we are now, and she's coming. The real her. Not just her spirit. Maren looked at Soren, who stood pale and shaken, ice still crackling beneath his feet. How long? She asked. Soren's jaw clenched. If she's traveling from her stronghold in the frozen wastes, 3 days, maybe less. 3 days to prepare for an ancient frost witch who had killed hundreds. 3 days to find a way to break an unbreakable curse. 3 days to save everyone she loved. Maren held her son tighter and made a decision. Then we don't wait for her to come to us, she said. We go to her. 2 days later, Maren stood in the armory of the northern citadel, strapping on leather armor that had been reinforced with fire-resistant threading. She was going to face Seraphine, alone. Absolutely not. Soren's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. He stood in the doorway, his face carved from ice, his pale gray eyes blazing with something that looked terrifyingly like fear. You can't stop me, Maren said without turning. I'm your alpha. I can absolutely stop you. You're my contracted mate. She finally turned to face him. You agreed to never love me. That means you don't get to make decisions about my safety. Soren crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing her arms with frost-coated hands. Don't do this. Someone has to. Seraphine won't stop until the curse is complete, until you're frozen solid, until Kale is either dead or turned into her weapon. Marin met his gaze unflinching. I'm the only one with fire strong enough to face her. You know this. Then I'll come with you. You can't. The closer you get to her, the stronger the curse becomes. If you face her directly, you'll freeze before you can raise a hand. Marin's voice softened. This is my fight, Soren. Let me fight it. Why? The word was raw, broken. Why would you risk your life for me? For a cold, cursed alpha who promised you nothing but obligation? Marin's heart hammered. She knew she shouldn't say it. Knew what the confession might trigger, but she was tired of hiding. Tired of pretending. Because I love you, she said. Soren went still. I know you said you couldn't love me back. I know you said it was impossible. But somewhere between the contract and the coldness, and the way you hold our son like he's the most precious thing in the world. Marin's eyes burned with unshed tears. I fell in love with you, Soren Valdrin, and I won't let some ancient witch take you away from me. Not when I've finally found something worth fighting for. The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Then Soren's hands moved from her arms to her face, cupping her cheeks with trembling fingers. You impossible woman, he whispered. Don't you understand? I've been fighting this since the moment you signed that contract, trying to stay cold, trying to feel nothing. But you burn through every wall I build. You thaw every defense I raise. His forehead pressed against hers. I love you, Marin. God's help me. I love you so much it's destroying me. The moment the words left his lips, his eyes went wide. Pain lanced across his features. Soren? Marin grabbed his shoulders as he staggered. Soren, what's happening? He looked down at his chest. Through the thin fabric of his shirt she could see it. Frost spreading across his skin like a living thing, crystallizing over his heart in jagged patterns. The curse, he gasped. I triggered the full... He collapsed. Soren? Marin caught him, lowering him to the floor. His skin was ice under her palms, colder than she'd ever felt it. His lips were turning blue. Frost crept up his neck toward his face. Don't. His hand found hers, grip weakening. Don't go after her. Not worth dying for. You're not dying, Marin snarled. I won't let you die. Can't stop. The curse. Can't. His eyes fluttered closed. Soren. Soren. She shook him, but he didn't respond. His breathing grew shallow. The frost continued spreading. Footsteps pounded in the corridor. The door burst open. Guards, servants, healers, all flooding in, all stopping short at the sight of their alpha lying frozen on the ground. Get a healer, Marin screamed. Someone help him. But she could see it in their eyes. The resignation, the grief. They'd seen this before, 7 times before. The Frost Wolf's curse had claimed another victim. This time, it would claim him. No. Marin pressed her burning hands against Soren's chest, pouring heat into him. I won't accept this. I won't. Mama. Kale appeared beside her, his small face pale but determined. He can't be saved like this, Kale said quietly. The curse is rooted in Seraphine. As long as she lives, the ice will keep growing. You have to go to her. I can't leave him. You have to. Kale placed his small hand over hers on Soren's chest. I'll keep him warm. The fire in me will hold back the ice, but it won't last forever. You have a day, Mama. Maybe less. Marin looked at her son, this impossible child who carried fire and ice in his blood, who spoke with ancient knowing, who had somehow become the key to everything. How do I kill her? She asked. You don't kill her. Kale's pale eyes met hers. You burn the curse at its source. When Seraphine cursed our ancestor, she bound the spell to something physical, an object, a talisman. Find it, destroy it, and the curse dies with it. How do I find it? Kale reached into his pocket and withdrew something. A small crystal, pale blue, thrumming with cold energy. She left this behind when I forced her out. It's connected to her. Follow its pull, and you'll find the source. Marin took the crystal. It burned with cold against her palm, but her fire met it, neutralized it. I'll be back, she promised. I know you will. Kale smiled, small and brave. You're my mama. You always come back. Marin kissed his forehead, pressed one last burning hand against Soren's frozen chest, and ran. The frozen wastes lived up to their name. Marin had been riding for 6 hours, her horse struggling through snow so deep it reached the animal's chest. The cold was relentless, pressing against her fire like a physical enemy, forcing her to burn hotter and hotter just to stay conscious. The crystal in her pocket pulsed steadily, guiding her north. Always north, toward Seraphine. She'd noticed tracks in the snow an hour back, someone else traveling the same direction. Smaller prints, a lighter horse. She hadn't stopped to investigate, but the knowledge that she wasn't alone in this wasteland sat uneasily in her chest. As she crested a ridge of ice, she saw it. A fortress carved from a glacier, ancient and terrible, its spires reaching toward a sky that had never known sunlight. Dark clouds swirled above it, pregnant with storms that never ended. And standing at the entrance as if waiting for her was a woman. She was beautiful in the way death was beautiful. White hair cascading past her waist, skin pale as fresh snow, eyes like frozen oceans, ancient and empty and utterly without mercy. Seraphine, the little fire carrier. Her voice carried across the distance without effort. I wondered how long it would take you to come. Marin dismounted, letting her horse retreat to safety. You know why I'm here. To save your mate, to break my curse, to play the hero in a story you don't understand. Seraphine smiled, and it was the coldest thing Marin had ever seen. You're just like your mother, you know. She came to me too once, begged me to spare her child, offered her own life in exchange. Marin's fire flickered. What? Oh, didn't you know? Seraphine descended the ice stairs with graceful steps. Your mother found me when you were 3 years old. She discovered what I was doing, hunting the last of the pyroline, eliminating the fire that threatened my perfect curse. She thought she could bargain, thought her sacrifice would be enough to protect you. What did you do to her? I killed her? Of course. Seraphine waved a hand dismissively. Froze her from the inside out. But before she died, she did something unexpected. She used the last of her fire to hide you, sealed your abilities so completely that I couldn't sense you anymore. For 20 years, I thought the pyroline was extinct. Marin's hands trembled. My mother died protecting me. My father said she abandoned us. Your father? Seraphine laughed. That pathetic man. Your mother disappeared in the middle of the night, and he convinced himself she'd run off with some wizard. He never found her body. I made sure of that. Couldn't accept that his beloved wife had been royalty, had been powerful, and had died fighting a battle he could never understand. Marin's fire surged. He branded me because he was afraid, threw me away because he was weak. Everything you've suffered, every indignity, every rejection, traces back to one source. You, me. Seraphine spread her arms. And now you've walked right into my stronghold, fire carrier, just like your mother before you. Just like every fool who thought they could challenge me. I'm not here to challenge you. Marin reached into her pocket and withdrew the crystal. I'm here to end you. Seraphine's expression flickered. Where did you get that? My son. When you tried to possess him, you left a piece of yourself behind. Marin held up the crystal, which pulsed with cold light. This is connected to your curse, isn't it? To whatever talisman you bound the spell to. Take me to it, and maybe I'll make your death quick. Seraphine's laughter echoed off the ice walls. You think that little shard will lead you to my talisman? Child, the talisman has been hidden for 10 generations. No one has ever. The North Tower. Both women turned. A figure emerged from the swirling snow, a woman with dark hair and familiar features, wrapped in furs and shivering violently. Tanith. Marin stared at her sister in disbelief. What are you doing here? Saving you. Tanith's teeth chattered. Something I should have done years ago. How touching. Seraphine's voice dripped with contempt. Two sisters, reunited in my domain. Did you come to die together? I came to tell my sister the truth. Tanith stumbled forward, fighting the cold. When Father branded Marin and sent her to the registry, I thought it was justice. I thought she'd killed Rendrick. But after she was taken, she looked at Marin with tears in her eyes. I found Father's journals, his confessions. He knew Mother was Pyra. He knew what he was doing that night. Marin's breath caught. What do you mean? He engineered the confrontation with Rendrick. Tanith's voice shook with rage and grief. He knew your fire was unstable. He provoked both of you deliberately, hoping the magic would manifest and give him an excuse to be rid of you. Rendrick's death wasn't your fault. Marin. Father manipulated you into losing control. The ground seemed to shift beneath Marin's feet. All these years she'd carried the guilt of Rendrick's death. All these years she'd believed she was a murderer. But it had been her father all along. And? Seraphine sounded bored. Family drama is tedious. Get to the relevant part. Tanith turned to face the Frost Witch, her expression hardening. The relevant part is that Father wrote about you too. About the curse. About how you approached him years ago, offered him wealth and status if he'd help you hunt the Pyra. He refused, but he recorded everything. She pointed at the northern tower, including where you hide the talisman. Seraphine's face twisted with rage. You're lying. A crown of ice, Tanith continued, her voice growing stronger. Forged from the first frost you ever created. Hidden in the heart of your stronghold because you're too arrogant to imagine anyone would ever get this close. The temperature dropped so suddenly that Marin's breath crystallized in her lungs. You should have stayed home, little human. Seraphine raised her hand, and ice erupted from the ground, spearing toward Tanith. Marin didn't think. She moved. Fire exploded from her palms, intercepting the ice, turning it to steam that billowed across the frozen landscape. She threw herself in front of her sister, flames wreathing her body like armor. Go! She shouted at Tanith. Find the tower! Find the crown! I'm not leaving you. I can survive her cold. You can't. Go! Tanith hesitated for one agonizing moment. Then she turned and ran toward the fortress. Seraphine screamed with fury and launched another wave of ice. Marin met it with fire, the two forces colliding in an explosion of steam and light. You can't defeat me, Seraphine snarled. I've had 300 years to perfect my power. You've had days. Maybe. Marin pushed harder, her fire burning hotter than she'd ever allowed it to burn. But I have something you don't. What? Something to live for. She thought of Soren, frozen and dying in the citadel. Of Kale, holding back the ice with his impossible gift. Of Tanith, running toward the tower to find the crown. She thought of love. And her fire roared. The battle raged across the frozen courtyard. Ice and fire collided again and again, neither gaining ground, both combatants pouring everything they had into the fight. Marin's arms ached, her lungs burned, but she couldn't stop. Every moment she held Seraphine's attention was another moment Tanith had to find the crown. You're weakening, Seraphine cackled. I can feel your flames guttering. How long can you sustain this fire carrier? Another minute? 2? She was right. Marin's fire was dimming. She'd been burning at full intensity for too long, and her body was paying the price. Maybe I can't defeat you, Marin gasped, but I don't have to. I just have to hold you here. Seraphine's eyes widened. The tower, your sister, is probably there already. Seraphine whirled toward the fortress, raising her hand to summon more ice warriors, more defenses, more. Marin! Tanith's voice echoed from the tower's peak. Marin looked up to see her sister standing at a window, holding something that glittered with cold blue light. A crown of ice. "Burn it!" Marin screamed. "I can't. It's too cold. I can't." "Throw it to me." Tanith didn't hesitate. She hurled the crown from the window, and it arced through the frozen air toward Marin. Seraphine moved to intercept. Marin moved faster. She caught the crown in both hands, ignoring the searing cold that burned her palms, and poured every remaining spark of fire she possessed into its frozen heart. "No!" Seraphine's scream shattered the air. "No, you can't." The crown began to glow. Red light cracked through the blue ice, spreading like veins, like roots, like the fire that had always been waiting to be freed. And then it exploded. Light erupted across the frozen wastes. Not cold light, but warm light, golden and blazing and alive. Marin felt the blast hit her like a wave, throwing her backward, filling her with heat and energy and something that felt like pure joy. When she opened her eyes, Seraphine was crumbling. The frost witch stood frozen in place, her body fracturing like old ice, cracks spreading across her skin. Her eyes, those ancient, terrible eyes, met Marin's one final time. "This isn't over," she rasped. "Fire and ice will always—" She shattered. 1,000 pieces of frost scattered across the snow, glittering in the sudden sunlight that broke through the clouds. The storms above the fortress dissipated. The eternal winter that had surrounded this place for 3 centuries began to thaw. Seraphine was gone. The curse was broken. Marin lay in the snow, gasping, laughing, and crying all at once. "Marin!" Tanith slid down the tower stairs and sprinted across the courtyard. "Marin, are you—" "I'm alive." Marin sat up, wiping tears from her face. "I'm alive. And Soren." Her heart clenched. "Soren. I have to get back. I have to see if—" "Go." Tanith grabbed her hands. "Take my horse. She's faster than yours. Come with me. I'll follow. There's something I need to do first." Tanith's expression was grim. "Father needs to answer for what he's done, for Mother, for you, for Rendrick, for everything." Marin looked at her sister. This woman who had hated her for years, who had believed she was a murderer, who had crossed the frozen wastes to save her anyway. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." Tanith squeezed her hands. "Just go save your mate." Marin ran. She rode through the night and into the dawn, pushing the horse to its limits, burning fire into its muscles to keep it warm and running. When the northern citadel came into view, she almost wept with relief. But as she passed through the gates, she saw something that made her stomach drop. The servants were wearing black, mourning colors. "No," Marin breathed. "No, no, no." She abandoned the horse and sprinted into the keep, up the stairs, through the corridors, toward the chambers where she'd left Soren dying. The door was open. Inside, she saw Kale kneeling beside the bed where Soren lay, his small hands pressed against his father's chest, his face streaked with tears. They must have thought him gone already, Marin realized with horror. They were preparing for the worst. "Kale?" Marin's voice cracked. "Is he—" Kale looked up and smiled. "Look, Mama." Marin looked. Soren's eyes were open. "You're late," he said, his voice rough but warm. "I was beginning to worry." Marin crossed the room in 3 steps and threw herself onto the bed, her arms wrapping around him, her face burying in his neck. He was warm. Actually warm. His skin was the temperature of any living person, his heartbeat strong and steady against her chest. "The curse is broken," she sobbed. "I burned it. I burned the crown and—" "I know." Soren's arms came around her, holding her tight. I felt it. The moment the ice shattered, I felt it. 17 years of cold, gone in an instant. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes, no longer frozen gray but a soft, warm blue, filled with wonder. You saved me. We saved each other. Maren cupped his face. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to fight. I just returned the favor. Mama. Kale tugged at her sleeve. Mama, look at father's chest. Maren looked down. Soren's shirt had fallen open, revealing skin that was smooth and warm and utterly free of frost. But that wasn't what made her gasp. Written across his heart, in lines of silver that shimmered like starlight, were words. Ancient words. Words that hadn't been there before. The bond mark, Soren breathed, staring down at himself. The true bond mark. I thought I couldn't. Maren touched the silver words, tracing them with her fingertips. They were warm beneath her touch, pulsing with life. What did they say? Soren's voice was thick with emotion. Their names. Your name, Kale's name, and... He looked up at her. The name of our second child. Maren's breath caught. What? You didn't know? Soren's hand moved to her stomach, pressing gently. The bond shows me what my heart holds. And my heart holds 3 people now. Maren looked down at his hand, then up at his face. I'm pregnant? Yes. His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. You're carrying our daughter. Maren burst into tears. Kale threw his arms around both of them. And outside the window, for the first time in 300 years, the sun rose over the northern citadel without a single cloud in the sky. 6 months later, the gardens of the northern citadel were in full bloom. Maren still marveled at it. For centuries, the grounds had been locked in permanent winter. But with the curse broken and Soren's fire restored, because he did have fire, buried so deep beneath the ice that even he hadn't known it existed, warmth had returned to the north. Flowers grew where frost had once reigned. Trees blossomed where ice had choked the soil. Children played in fields that had never known anything but snow. And in the center of the garden, beneath a canopy of white roses, Maren sat with her daughter in her arms. She has your eyes, Soren said, settling beside her on the stone bench, and your stubbornness. Maren smiled as their daughter, Lyris, named for the silver marks on Soren's chest, yawned and settled more deeply against her mother's breast. Speaking of stubbornness, Soren nodded toward the far end of the garden, where Kale was engaged in a serious conversation with a much older man. Your sister's testimony was accepted by the High Council this morning. Your father has been stripped of his title and lands. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Maren felt nothing at the news. No satisfaction, no grief, no anger. Just emptiness where her father had once been. Good, she said simply. Tanith has been appointed to oversee the Crane estates in his absence. She's asked if you'd consider visiting. Eventually. Maren watched Kale laugh at something the old man said. Who's that he's talking to? Lord Vashin, the former court historian. Kale's been pestering him for stories about the old Pyra kingdom. Soren's arm came around her shoulders. Our son has been quite insistent that the true history of your people be recorded. Something about making sure no one forgets. Maren's throat tightened. He's remarkable. He gets it from his mother. She leaned into him, feeling his warmth. Real, lasting warmth, seep into her bones. I love you. I love you too. He pressed a kiss to her hair. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. You don't have to prove anything. I know. He smiled. But I want to. Kale came running across the garden, his pale eyes bright with excitement. Mama, Father, Lord Vashin says there might be other Pyra survivors, hidden bloodlines scattered across the territories. He thinks we could find them if... Slow down. Maren laughed, shifting Lyris to make room for Kale on the bench. One world-changing discovery at a time. Kale grinned. Fine. But after Lyrus's naming ceremony, can we start looking? Please? Soren and Marin exchanged looks. After the naming ceremony, Soren agreed. Kale whooped and ran off to tell Lord Vashin the good news. Marin watched him go. This impossible boy who had brought her and Soren together, who had held back a curse with nothing but the fire in his blood, who had seen something worth saving in a frozen alpha everyone else had given up on. What are you thinking? Soren asked quietly. Marin looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully. At her son, laughing in the sunshine. At her mate, warm and alive and looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I'm thinking, she said, that I used to believe fire only destroyed. And now? She smiled. Now I know it can heal too. Soren kissed her, warm and slow and full of promise. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the mountains that had once been locked in eternal winter, spring was finally arriving in the Northern Territories. For the first time in 300 years.